You proved your point cleanly in the meeting. No one acknowledged it. Then, 10 minutes later, someone else said something adjacent to what you said, and the room responded. Not with hostility. With attention. The kind you just did not receive. What you did next is the part worth examining. You did not get louder. You got more precise. You introduced a clarification nobody asked for, added a data point that re-anchored the original idea as yours, and in doing so, made visible, to everyone in the room, exactly how much it mattered to you that they knew. The room registered that. Not your idea. Your need for the idea to be registered. And something shifted, quietly, without announcement, in how the rest of the meeting treated your contributions. This is not a story about being overlooked. That part you already know. This is about what you do after the overlooking happens, and what that response has been costing you in rooms you cannot afford to lose. When someone consistently demonstrates expertise in a group setting, the group does not uniformly increase its deference. Researchers studying conversational dynamics have noticed that beyond a certain threshold of demonstrated competence, the social response inverts. The group begins interrupting that person more frequently, not less. The competence is not doubted. The display of it is being managed. What looks like dismissal is often something more precise. A room quietly redistributing authority that felt like it was being claimed rather than offered. You have been operating as though the problem is that people do not recognize what you know. The problem is that they do, and they are responding to how that knowledge has been carried into the room. Every time you have clarified, corrected, added the supporting detail that was not requested, re-anchored a credit that was drifting towards someone else, you have been legible. Not as competent. As someone for whom competence is a survival mechanism. And the room treats those two things differently. People extend authority to someone who holds it quietly. They manage someone who needs it confirmed. You are not unaware of this. Some version of you has noticed, in the car after the meeting, or in the 30 seconds before sleep, that the clarification made things worse. That the re-anchoring changed the temperature. That proving the point cost you something in the room even as it recovered it on the record. What you have not had is a mechanical explanation for why, and without that explanation, you have kept choosing the same behavior, because it is the only one that feels like not surrendering. Here is the structure beneath it. The visibility trap. When competence is under threat of being misattributed, the instinct is to make the record clear. The behavior this produces, the additional data point, the precise correction, the re-anchored contribution, is not aggression. It is accuracy. From the inside, it feels like discipline. It feels like refusing to let the room construct a version of events that is false. Watch what it looks like from the outside. In a project review, someone presents work that draws heavily from groundwork you laid 3 weeks earlier. They do not credit it. You do not interrupt. But when the discussion opens, you introduce your prior contribution with enough specificity, dates, framing, the particular insight that seeded the direction, that the attribution becomes undeniable. The room hears accuracy. It also hears accounting. And accounting, in a social environment, does not read as precision. It reads as vigilance. The room now understands something about you that you did not intend to disclose. You do this in the specific moment when you most need the room to focus on your substance. You pull their attention to your need for the substance to be recognized. The two are not the same thing. And the room cannot hold both at once. The self-concept this behavior encodes is one where your standing in the room is always provisional, always one misattribution away from erasure. A person who holds their position securely does not need to hold the record. You have been keeping the record because somewhere in your operating model, you are not sure the room is keeping it for you. The inversion, the moments you have felt most dismissed are not the moments you said nothing. They are the moments you said the precise right thing with enough visible investment that the room's attention moved from the content to the investment. Silence after being overlooked does not confirm the oversight. It applies pressure the room must resolve. The correction confirms something the room was only partially suspecting. In the next team meeting where someone else receives credit adjacent to yours, notice what happens in the 3 seconds before you decide whether to speak. That 3-second window is not empty. It contains a calculation you are running automatically, and the output of that calculation has been producing the same behavior across different rooms for longer than you have been tracking it. What the calculation is actually optimizing for is worth examining. The way a room decides whose authority to interrupt is not a conscious vote. It happens in the accumulated residue of every prior exchange. The precision penalty. When someone is consistently the most prepared person in a room, the group develops a specific relationship to their contributions. Not skepticism, something more structurally inconvenient. The highly prepared person's points tend to close discussion rather than open it. They are complete, sourced, and difficult to build on. The group learns, without deciding to learn it, that this person's contributions are endpoints. And endpoints get managed differently than entry points. A quarterly planning call. One person on the team arrives with projections already modeled, scenarios already stress-tested, objections already cataloged and pre-answered. They present. The presentation is clean. Then a colleague raises a half-formed thought with incomplete data and the group leans in, starts riffing, building, adding. The conversation stays there for 11 minutes. The prepared person's contribution is referenced as settled ground. It is not discussed. It is not alive. It passed through the room like a closed door. You have been in that call. Not always on the presenting side. You have also been the one who watched someone else's incomplete idea get the room's energy while yours, which was better, got filed. And what you concluded from that, if you concluded anything, was probably something about the room's inability to recognize quality. The room recognized quality. It cannot play with quality. It can only play with openness. And the closed, prepared, pre-answered contribution, however correct, does not invite the room to participate in discovering the answer. It invites them to receive it. Groups resist reception. They gravitate toward discovery, even when the discovery is slower and less accurate. A person who has been underestimated in rooms for long enough eventually develops preparation as armor. If you arrive with everything already answered, you cannot be dismissed for not having thought it through. The preparation is not intellectual vanity. It is a protective structure built from the memory of being in a room without it, and watching that absence be used against you. That history is real. The preparation it produced is real. What it is now costing you, in how rooms treat your contributions, in how much of the conversation you are excluded from by virtue of being the person who already knows, is also real. Researchers observing group dynamics have noticed that perceived expertise and conversational inclusion exist in an inverse relationship past a certain threshold. The person with the highest observable preparation receives the least collaborative engagement. Not because their contributions are undervalued, because they have signaled that collaboration is not required. The room takes them at their word. Walk into the next meeting where you have done the most preparation, and do not arrive with answers. Arrive with the first half of a question. Watch what happens to your position in the room over the following 20 minutes. You will be interrupted more, but differently than you are used to. The interruptions will not be dismissals. There will be people trying to get to where you already are. That is a different kind of authority than the one you have been building. It is considerably harder to manage around. The behavior that was built to prevent being underestimated has become the behavior that makes underestimation structurally necessary for the room to function. Here is something the previous two laws make easy to do. You are likely, at this point, thinking of someone specific. Not yourself. Someone you have watched operate this way in professional or social settings. The colleague who over-explains after being right. The person in the room who treats every meeting like a record that needs correcting. You can see the pattern operating in them with some clarity. It is visible from the outside in a way it was not before the script named it. That recognition feels like understanding the law. It is the law. The behavior the respect wound produces at high intelligence is not overperformance in obvious moments. It is the tendency to diagnose this pattern in others, to see the competence display, the credit anchoring, the defensive preparation, everywhere except in the specific version you are running. The monitoring of other people's status behavior is a behavioral output of the same wound that produces status behavior. You watch because you are sensitized. You are sensitized because the room has cost you something. The watching feels like awareness. It is also a way of keeping the wound current without having to examine where it lives in you. Notice, the colleague you just pictured. When did you start watching them? Was it before or after a moment in a shared professional context where something went sideways between you? The observation and the wound that made the observation necessary usually share an origin that has not been fully examined. This is not assigned as an intent. It is described as a mechanism. The diagnostic intelligence that makes you excellent at reading rooms does not distinguish between reading for understanding and reading for protection. It runs both operations simultaneously, through the same perceptual system, and does not flag which output is which. The result is that what feels like clarity about other people is sometimes the wound extending its perimeter. The extension feels like competence. From the outside, It occasionally reads as something else. In the next conversation where you find yourself building a quiet case about someone's behavior, cataloging their patterns, noting their inconsistencies, pause long enough to ask when the cataloging started. Not as a character judgment. As a timing question. The answer will tell you something about what preceded the observation that the observation itself cannot. The composure cost. The most sophisticated version of the competence tax does not look like overperformance. It looks like restraint. You have been in rooms where you said nothing. Where someone said something wrong, or credited incorrectly, or positioned an idea as theirs when the architecture was yours, and you held the correction. Did not clarify. Did not re-anchor. Stayed composed, measured, gave the room no visible signal of what you noticed. You walked out of that meeting holding the composure like evidence that you are above the accounting. It felt like discipline. It was described to yourself, later, as not caring about credit. The composed silence after being dismissed and the genuine indifference to credit produce identical external behavior. They do not produce identical internal states, and they do not produce identical social outcomes. The observer who studies body language and conversational micropatterns can usually distinguish between them. The room often cannot. But the person running composed silence knows the distinction intimately, because the silence requires maintenance in a way that genuine indifference does not. Genuine indifference is not a performance. Composed silence is. A team lead in a cross-functional working group, documented in an organizational behavior observation, consistently declined to correct misattributions of her strategic contributions. She held composure across 6 weeks of meetings while a peer absorbed credit for a product direction she had architected. The room, over that period, did not interpret her silence as security. It interpreted it as absence. By the time the project reached executive review, she was not associated with the work in the room's operating memory. The peer was. The composure had been flawless. The outcome was exactly what she had been performing composure to avoid. What composure costs is not dignity. It is legibility. The room cannot credit what it cannot read. And the person performing composure over genuine injury has made themselves unreadable in the specific register, contribution, authorship, position, where they most need to be seen. You know which version of composure you were running the last time you held silence in a room that should have heard you. You know because genuine indifference does not rehearse the scenario afterward. It does not reconstruct the correct response. It does not inventory what it did not say. The next meeting where you feel the pull toward composed silence after being misread, what you are holding in that moment is not discipline. It is a decision. The decision has a cost either way. The composure you have been favoring has a cost that is currently invisible to you in the moment, and visible to everyone else across the duration. A room does not decide who to interrupt. It decides who is still negotiating for their position, and it treats that negotiation as the invitation. The people in a performance review, a team call, a strategy session, they are not assessing the quality of contributions in isolation. They are reading what each contribution signals about the person making it. Competence signals different things depending on how it arrives. Competence that arrives already holding its own defense is read as needing defense. Competence that arrives without one is read as not requiring it. The competence tax is not a penalty for being capable. It is the cost of carrying capability into a room like something that might be taken. Every behavior examined here, the record correcting, the defensive preparation, the diagnostic watching, the composed silence, is a structural response to a room that once took something. The behaviors are rational. They are also instructions the room reads as an ongoing negotiation, and the room responds to ongoing negotiations by staying in one. What changes the dynamic is not more skillful performance of any of these behaviors. It is the recognition that the negotiation has been running, and that the room has known it was running longer than you have. What gets interrupted most in a room is not the weakest argument. It is the argument that is visibly invested in not being interrupted, because the investment signals to everyone present that the floor is still being contested, not held. The behavioral architecture this video has mapped does not stop at competence. It governs everything that happens in a room after you have established you are right, which makes the moments when you are most right the moments when the structure is running hardest and most invisibly. That next layer operates beneath the competence tax. It is more specific, more socially precise, and considerably harder to see from inside it. Think of the last meeting where you left feeling dismissed despite having contributed the thing the room most needed. What you did in the 60 seconds after you made that contribution, not the contribution itself, what you did immediately after, and what that behavior communicated to the room before the next person spoke. Sit with the gap between what you intended that behavior to signal and what it likely signaled instead.